Hey everyone, welcome to Marvel Time. As you can see, this is our Diamond episode, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that.
issue number 60. So we just keep chugging along here. We're not gonna catch up to Disney Trivia Live because then them and their 2 episode a week schedule. We'll catch up to them, but But yeah, so 60 episodes. We are going to be talking about obviously some new comics this week. We'll talk about the latest in Marvel news, but then also we got the first episode of What If on Disney Plus, and Kyle has a question for us. To me, it is always Marvel time, so that's just normal life for me. So, and as you can see, Benji is not joining us. We have Bekah stepping in.
Yep.
Filling in always, keeping that Wednesday Warrior card.
Exactly. Yeah, I get to keep the membership for a couple more weeks, right?
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into this comics, and we started off with X-Force number 22. This is, we talk about this all the time. The X comics end up being a little bit more complex and weird and just out there. What were your thoughts on X-Force number 22?
It was really violent. Again, there's a lot with the X-Men comics that I'm like, wait, what is happening? So I feel like I'm, of course, jumping in. This is issue 22. So I'm jumping in the middle of something. But it was an interesting storyline, but I don't have all of that, backup history to know everything that's going on. I liked it. I think of the X-Men comics that I've read for Marvel Time so far, this one is something I'd like to go back and see more of the X-Force stories to see how we wound up at this point.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment. I mean, X-Force is sort of the more straightforward team and series right now. I mean, when you look at the characters involved, with characters like Domino and Wolverine, and it's more action heavy and focused on that as opposed to really, crazy out there plot driven stuff. Although I will say this one has this sort of not backstory, but this underlying overarching story going on here with the sort of politics of Krakoa. Mm-hmm. And that to me was the more interesting part of this particular issue, because this one Marvel has sort of been leaning on the idea of like villainous plants lately. It's been popping up more and more, and I'm kind of getting tired of it. It gets pretty repetitive. It was well done here for sure. I mean, like you said, it was a pretty violent comic. We got some pretty interesting images throughout this issue, yes. And it was fun. There was a decent amount of action. There was an interesting character, but again, yeah, I'm just not really into the whole plant villain thing anymore right now. Coming off, granted, Empire was over a year ago now, but it still feels like it's fresh in my mind. So, yeah, it was, it was definitely interesting. That is sort of the idea of of this comic. And to be honest, you didn't miss out much by not having read a lot of the X-Force. Like, this was sort of leaping into a new story here, so I was for the most part just as lost as you. But yeah, like I said, I do think it set up some interesting things involving Krakoa and how they're sharing their medicines with the rest of the world and the problems that is creating and where that could go from here. So definitely not my pick of the week, but also I think this whole lineup that we had was solid across the board, but nothing really stood out to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, I do have one that stood out, but yes, I would agree with that for today's.
Well, speaking of, our next issue is going to be Captain Marvel number 31. And I will say this now, this is my pick of the week.
Okay.
So I enjoyed this. It was a fairly simple, driven. It was very much about Carol and Rhodey and their relationship. And, we kind of get these sort of things, these sorts of issues somewhat frequently, where the heroes are, trying to step away from being a hero and trying to get, some relaxation time. And then it, of course, gets interrupted. And that's what this issue is really about here. And the characters have been written so well and are really entertaining. So, yeah, I really like this issue. What were your thoughts?
There's a lot of Carol's history that I don't know. So I don't know if it's a spoiler, but she's got a half Cree, or because she's half Cree, she has a half sister who's a Cree. So I thought that was interesting. I did not know that, and um, I enjoyed the dialogue between the three of them,
Yeah.
Rhodey and what is it, Lori and Carol.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Funny enough, I can never get past it. Her name is L'Oreal. And so
I know.
it's just shampoo to me every single
That's I
time.
read that, I was like, "Oh, they actually okay. Just call her Lori.
Yeah.
Don't need the L'Oreal." But, yeah, this was this was an interesting, storyline, and again, jumping in the middle of it. I like that, like you said, it's just kind of a straightforward story, which I appreciated,
Right.
because you don't always need, you know, everything to be super detailed and complicated, but
Yeah, and this felt like it was going to be a self-contained story. Like this was just more of not a one shot really, because it is a continuation of Carol's
Mhm.
story and what's going on with her relationships and things like that. But it felt as though the story began and ended in this issue, but they do give you a tease at the end of that last page, and it sets up something potentially very interesting and leads into the I'm blanking on the Last
Last
of the
of
Marvels.
yeah.
There we go. Yes, too many upcoming storylines in my head, but yeah.
No, you're
So
good.
sets up Last of the Marvels, and I think it did so in an interesting way. So I like this issue a lot. I thought it was really funny. L'Oreal calling a flight attendant a small woman in charge of flying
Yes.
was very funny. And she is just a shampoo name aside, it's a perfect compliment to Carol and to Rhodey. So when the three of them get together, you get some really funny panels. So
Yeah. I appreciate it. I do appreciate that. It reminded me somewhat of Drax with his response, at least in the movies, how he
yeah,
responds to things. And other characters have done that too. So it's kind of nice to have that, someone who's not ignorant but doesn't quite know how things are on one world, and yeah, that's
right. Doesn't quite
humor.
get sarcasm and
Right.
stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. Drax is a very good comparison. That was a good call. Moving on, our next issue is Daredevil number 33. And I have to give a shout out to the covers of the comics this week, because I mean this one is absolutely awesome and
Mhm.
still not my favorite one of the week. So I think the art really stood out in some of these issues, especially on these covers.
Yeah, very much so. And even like I think I've talked about it a couple weeks ago, but I'm amazed at how the different authors and artists put these stories together in such interesting ways, and using, I don't know, just amazing visuals too, like to portray a story, and
Yeah,
it's awesome.
especially when you get these teams that are, you'll have an artist working with an author for so long, and then you get a writer teaming up with a different artist, and it's amazing to see the different combinations and how they all work so well together. For the most part, at least. I mean, you get some really great combinations of work here. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on this issue, because this is one where I think if you haven't been reading at least a little bit of Daredevil and know what's going on in this world, I could see it being very confusing. So I'm curious to know what you thought about this issue.
It was confusing, but I I gathered that there's some well, they state at the beginning that Kingpin, or formerly known as Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, he's what,
Mhm.
now the mayor, which I'm like, how much power does this guy need? Like, has he not done and been everything? But it seems like there's a couple of different plots going on,
Oh
and
yeah,
there's several different I don't know, like moving pieces that I'm guessing are probably part of the whole and not just side stories, but maybe I'm wrong. Um, with the new kingpin, if you will. Again, am I spoiling things?
no, no. This is information that was kind of laid out there, and honestly, we haven't done every issue of this ongoing Daredevil series, so there's parts of it that I'm missing too. But yeah, so there is a different Kingpin. Wilson Fisk is now the mayor. Yeah, so you're not spoiling anything.
Okay.
It is kind of hard to follow it myself, to be honest. So,
but yeah, I would go. I would read more of this. Let me just put it that way. Like I'm not at the point where I'm like I don't need any more of this particular storyline.
right.
Oh, and I did appreciate. Keep saying appreciate. I liked seeing Tony Stark showed up in this one as well, working with Elektra. So that was kind of fun. I'm like, hey, people I know.
Yeah, so that was the one thing where I wasn't sure if you would have if it would have been like strange to see. So Matt Murdock has been in prison for I don't know the last 15 issues or so, and Elektra has been acting as Daredevil on the streets while he is out of action. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be something like why is this not Matt Murdock? Why is it a different Daredevil? But I have really enjoyed this run of Elektra being Daredevil, and I think the action has been awesome. The character has taken some really cool turns, and I mean this was set up previously too. So we're dealing with an army of bullseyes, which is just a really cool concept. He's an incredibly dangerous villain on his own. Now you have clones of him running around, so makes things really interesting. It's very action heavy right from the beginning. And like you said, we get some involvement from Tony Stark and from Spider-Man, even if it's just one panel really for Spider-Man, but pulling those other characters into it makes it a lot of fun. Yeah, I like everything that's happening with Elektra. I'm not sure what's going on with Matt Murdock. That takes a very strange turn here in this issue.
Yeah, he seems kind of dark, I guess.
Yeah,
the very little that you get of him.
Right. Which is something that's happened with Matt Murdock in the past. So I'm very curious to see where this goes. And I mean, now I'm really looking forward to. I'm with you. I want more of this Daredevil series. Our next issue, we've got Miles Morales Spider-Man number 29, and this is the fallout of the Clone Saga. And like I said, that Daredevil one, that cover was awesome. This is my favorite cover. This cover is incredible. I can't even begin to understand how you can draw something to look like that. That has to be a film.
I know. I'm always yes. I completely agree. How do you do that?
So I believe you were on for one of the Clone Saga issues, correct? Was it the finale?
Yeah, I think it was the one right before this. I don't think there's anything in between.
Good. So you were set up for success with this issue
then. this I saw this. I was like, perfect. I kind of know what's happening here. I love that it starts with Miles keeping a journal. I thought that was I know that that's a thing that many storytellers will use. But I liked that. It seemed it seemed like something he would do. So I thought that was cool and a good way to catch us up. And I guess kind of back in the last episode, he is almost like buddies with one of his clones. And so I wondered how that was going to play into the next series. And then of course we find out.
Yeah. So it was nice to pick up on that so quickly, because typically when you wrap up a story arc like that, we'll have to wait quite a while to see what plays out afterwards. But yeah, I enjoyed seeing that continuation of the story. This was, like I said, with the Captain Marvel story, this is one where it's more of a human story as opposed to it being a Spider-Man. Like this is a Miles Morales issue and not so much a Spider-Man issue. But we got some really cool things with Shift, I believe is the other clone's name. And we also got a look at a new costume for Miles Morales, which looks awesome. And I was so worried. We were getting down to the last page, and I was like, "Oh no, we're not going to see this costume this week." Took me back to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where I was like, "Oh no, we're not going to get to see what's inside that crate."
Right.
But we do get a glimpse of the new costume on the final page. I can't wait to see it in action some more after this. But yeah, so I take it you liked this issue, given that it was, pretty straightforward for having read the previous one.
Yes, I did. I enjoyed this, and I liked. I was thinking just like you. Are we actually going to get the suit reveal? I'm glad we did. I think it looks cool too. Um, yeah, this this was a good story.
Cool. And on to our final issue, which is Defenders #1. And I process of elimination here. I guess this is your pick of the week.
This is my pick of the week. It was kind of trippy, and I loved the artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very into the visuals for this story. But
Yeah, the way you just summed that up, that's my description of every Doctor Strange comic I've ever read. Kind of
okay,
trippy and love the artwork. That's pretty
okay.
much everything.
Well, there we go. Considering this is Doctor Strange, I know you and I talked before, but I thought the Defenders, like my previous knowledge of the Defenders was like the Netflix shows,
Right.
like
Yeah.
those street level heroes. But you said that there's actually been like an original, or this is
Yeah.
other people part of the Defenders.
Yeah. I'm not sure what caused that change with. I mean, I know there was the appeal of having those street level heroes, but I'm not sure why they gave them the name the Defenders. The Defenders were originally Doctor Strange, the Hulk, and Namor. Silver Surfer ended up being a member of the team as well, which you can see on the cover here. Um, so yeah, very, very different team. This is also a very different lineup for the Defenders and a very strange, no pun intended, story set up for them here too. So this is a continuation of Marvel Comics. Well, I guess kind of a continuation of Marvel Comics #1000, which came out over a year ago now. And I had been wondering for quite a while when that story was going to continue. And that's where we got the Masked Raider, who you can see on the cover there with that black mask and the hat. Very interesting character that we don't know a ton about. And so we finally get a little bit more of his story here. And this whole issue doesn't give us a ton of story as much as it is like, here's the problem we're going to be facing, and here's the team we're assembling. And that's basically what this is. It's done, like you said, very trippy with some really cool visuals. And it definitely interesting. And like I said, very weird team assembled here. So I am definitely hooked on what is happening in this series, and I really want to know what's happening with the Masked Raider.
Yeah, me too. I'm not familiar with that character at all, but I'm very like, okay, what is this? This is good. And as oh, sorry, lost my train of thought there. But oh, as you said, this is much more of a setting up like this is what we're going to be doing. Maybe that's why I liked it too, because it's like here's all the key players, here's what's
Right.
going to be happening, and then, I could be disappointed later on.
Right. Yeah. You're not jumping into the 30th issue of a series here. And even the little bit of context that we got on the Masked Raider from Marvel Comics 1000, that was an 80-page issue where Masked Raider popped up once every like 10 pages. And aside from that, it was all like one-page stories. So it's not even like we got a ton of context on him in that issue. So you really did not miss much at all leading into this. So this is, I mean, self-explanatory issue #1, but you really don't need any prior knowledge aside from knowing that Doctor Strange is a little weird. But I think everybody knows that at this point. So if you're looking to jump into a Defender story or even just any new Marvel comic story, this is certainly an issue you can pick up.
Yeah, I second that.
All right, so that is it for our comics this week. Let's get into the new Marvel Disney Plus series, Marvel's What If. This is obviously very different. It's an animated series, the first Marvel Studios animated series. Obviously going to be very different from Loki and WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But the timing of this couldn't be coming out of Loki, where they splintered the universe into the multiverse, and now we're getting to look at some of those other branches. So what were your thoughts on this first episode here?
Well, so I wondered if on the whole, all of the what if stories are going to actually be part of like the same storyline, but I I guess that's really like an ignorant thought, because it sounds like you just said, we're branching into a whole bunch of different storylines. Um this was good. I didn't love it, but I I thoroughly enjoyed it. The art style is a little weird for me, but I like that they've fleshed out an entire story here with Peggy at the center of it.
Yeah, I really liked it. I don't know that I can say I loved it. I think this is a good introduction episode. It's pretty simple. I think there are other stories that I will like more than this one. But I agree. I love that they started off with Peggy. I think that was a great character I mean, fans have wanted to see more of Peggy. We got Agent Carter, and feels like forever ago now, and then that kind of fell by the wayside, and we've wanted more of Peggy ever since. And so here we go. We got to see. And I don't know if you saw last week, but Benji asked me what my guess was as to what is the what if scenario with this episode, and I assumed it was just what if Peggy Carter became Captain Carter, but it's much simpler than that. It's really just what if she decided to stay in the room when Steve was undergoing that process. And I love that they do this because, I mean, from sci-fi movies and stuff like that, we hear of the butterfly effect, and one little thing that can change everything. And so she made that decision, and that altered how everything else happened, and that led to her becoming Captain Carter. I do love that we got a lot of the same conversations between her and Steve, kind of with roles reversed, kind of just showing us these two are meant to be together no matter what happens. So in every timeline, these two are together. And that plays back into, well, what the Avengers did in Endgame was supposed to happen because they had to get to Steve and Peggy being together. So I like that continuity there. I really like this. Like I said, there's a lot of smaller things about it that I love, and it is a little bit strange, but I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I can kind of be picky with animation styles, but I really liked the way this played out. I think we got a lot of really cool visuals. There was a lot about this that I liked. Ross Marquand, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who took over for Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull. And we obviously only got to see him a little bit in Infinity War and Endgame, but here he got to pretty much recreate that part from the first Avenger. And I thought knocked it out of the park. There were times where I thought, are they just using the audio from Hugo Weaving? Because it sounds exactly the same. He really nailed it.
Yeah, and even Steve as well. Like, it's not Chris, but it sounds like Steve Rogers.
Right.
Yeah, like you're saying, being able to recreate the whole Red Skull arc or that part of it. What a neat opportunity. And it doesn't feel like yes, you're hitting all the same beats, but it still does feel new and different, and it's not exhaustive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they managed to retell the story of that first movie, but they know we've all seen that movie, so they don't make us sit there and watch 2 hours of a story that we already know, as they kind of breeze through it very quickly. Before we move off of the cast, I do want to mention too that those are really the only two differences. Everything else, it's Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter, it's Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark, it's who else did we have in there?
Sebastian.
Sebastian Stan is Bucky. Samuel L. Jackson is Nick Fury for the 2 lines that he has. Jeremy Renner is back as Clint Barton. So I mean, they really loaded up with all of the normal voices that you're used to hearing. So I love that they managed to do that. Speaking of Bucky too, I thought it was interesting that this change in the story resulted in him not becoming the Winter Soldier, because when she goes and busts that whole the 107th out, he's in his normal cell with everybody else. And not being experimented on. Again, just shows you how one little change alters so many different things. I'm curious, do we think this leads to Steve becoming the Winter Soldier? Like he was also captured later on, and maybe he was experimented on. I'm really curious to see because we do know Captain Carter is going to come back for season 2.
That's true.
So I wonder.
That would be very interesting to have Steve Rogers as both the Steve Rogers name be both Winter Soldier and have been Captain America. I don't know. I I don't know.
I'm really curious to see if they explore that at all with the time we see Captain Carter. I do want to mention too that this whole the Red Skull's plan was to release or summon this champion of Hydra, and we don't really get to see what it is. We just see a bunch of tentacles coming out of a portal. That seems very reminiscent of Shuma Gorath, a interdimensional creature from Marvel Comics that has very similar tentacles, which is a weird sentence I've never said before. So possible that that's what that is. It's also possible we see that creature in the Doctor Strange episode that'll be coming up in this show. So I'm curious to see if we ever get an explanation with that. This also changed the events of Avengers, apparently, because we see Peggy come out of the Tesseract portal that Nick Fury opened up. And whereas that would have been Loki, instead it was Peggy Carter here. So again, just really cool to see how much that altered that little decision to stay in the room.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see what kind of story we get next week. I guess Benji knows, but he's not gonna give us that information. So we'll have to wait and see what comes next. He still has me really excited for the third episode, where we don't find out what the what if part of it is until the end. Can't wait. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to more of this show after this first episode. That's for sure.
Were you expecting more of the Watcher? I thought he'd do more. Well, I don't even know exactly what I thought, but I thought there'd be more narration throughout.
That was what I was going to say. I think maybe more narration, but I think they nailed it. I think they gave us just the right amount. This was more just introductory to this very strange character. So I like the way they handled it. I think for a more casual like MCU audience, I think this was a good way to do it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on What If before we move on to some news?
I'm looking forward to next week.
Yeah, definitely right there with you. Speaking of What If, you can now also change your avatar on Disney Plus to be either Captain Carter or the Watcher. So, I mean, jumped right on that as soon as the episode was out. You could immediately just switch over to that. So, pretty cool.
I don't think he looks as cool as the figure that you can get from the Build-A-Figure.
Yeah, I agree. I also like the sort of cosmic look they've given him in like the artwork and stuff, and you don't get that here. You kind of just like a guy with some weird eyes. But yeah, I agree. Staying in the MCU, we did get some new character posters for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which will be coming out very soon now. We are getting very close to the debut of this new MCU film. I cannot wait.
I know.
Some character posters here. We had Shang-Chi, we have Wenwu. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward. I'm so interested in the Death Dealer here. I think I have the most questions about this character, and I love the look, and looks like this character is going to lead to a lot of action, which seems to be the best part of this upcoming movie.
Right? No, I'm with you. I'm looking forward to all of this as well. I can't believe it's less than a month away. And yeah, like you're saying, the artwork, and it looks like it's going to be awesome.
So you got an interesting opportunity. We talked recently during San Diego Comic-Con about the Her Universe fashion show, and we found out that we had a connection with one of the artists, I suppose. Yeah, and
Designers.
Designer. There, that's the word I was looking for. So yeah, tell me, what was that experience like?
Yeah, I had the chance to, Christine was kind enough to agree to an interview with me. This is Christine Geiger, and she submitted that WandaVision look or the Scarlet Witch look for the Her Universe fashion show, and got to participate in that. So we talked a little bit about her process and being part of the fashion show, and then of course the dress itself, and then also a little bit about her career. She's a huge like Disney, Marvel, like all the fandoms. She loves everything, and that's an inspiration for a lot of her concept art and even some of the clothes that she ends up making. But yeah, that dress I think is really, really cool. She said it was harder for her to sew the dress than it was to sew the the jacket because of the material. She said the jacket was just like a dream because it's wool. So I did not know that that sewing with wool could be easier, but yeah, she was. She said her part of her inspiration for the outfit was, of course, the show, but then she also really liked the House of M um, comics, and she really loved both Vision and Scarlet Witch. So she pulled all of that for her inspiration. Also, she said she grew up on Nick at Night, so like everything about WandaVision was just like her childhood, which is so cool. But yeah, I have an entire interview on our YouTube and on the Laughing Place or on our website, so you can read all of that.
Very cool. Yeah, we're gonna appreciate our fellow nerds, and we both of us. I mean, we reacted as we were watching this the fashion show unfold, and this design is just so cool. I love just the black and white, and then you remove that and go into the color.
Into the color, yes.
So awesome. So creative and well done. You mentioned the wool being surprisingly easier. To me, I don't think it would be any easier or any harder. I think they're all equally impossible. So would not have helped me either way. But yeah, it's some really, really amazing work.
Yeah, she did. And I also recommend looking at her her Instagram because she has some like she's a bathing suit designer, so she has some concept art with a couple of Marvel styles and then some Disney styles. These unfortunately haven't been made, but you look at them and you're like, I would wear that, and I can see, I wish I had your talent to be able to craft something like even just as a concept.
Yeah, I'm with you there because I am nowhere near even being able to think about the possibilities of. Moving on, we got a look at these X-Men Minico figures, and these are really, really cool. I mean, you're our merch expert here. What are your thoughts on these little Minico figures?
No, I thought they were awesome. As soon as I saw them, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't really follow anything X-Men, but I might need to get a couple of these. And these are hand painted, so they're
Oh,
available
wow.
for pre-order, but they're not coming out until June of next year. So that would make sense if you have to hand paint all of these.
Yeah.
But they're pretty sizable too. I mean, like probably about as big as or as tall as like a smartphone, maybe a little bit different, but they're not super tiny. So there's some, they're pretty decent size. I really like the Jean Grey. I think that one looks
Yes.
awesome.
That
And
was the first one that caught my eye with the phoenix behind her. That is really, really cool.
actually, I'm not sure if the Phoenix is part of the display or is part of the figure because I feel like the picture that they showed of the product is different, but I
Okay.
love that. I love that picture and just she's actually standing on like a sentinel's head.
Oh, wow.
So that so that's pretty cool. And I love how Storm looks as well with her hair like blowing in the wind. It just
Yeah, I love that the design that they went with for these characters is all that 90s X-Men, the animated series look. I love that is the nostalgic Marvel look for me. So that Beast figure too, reading the book. Yeah, these are really cool. An awesome display piece for any Marvel collector out there.
and an interesting selection of heroes. So it's just those 8. But
Yeah.
I'm like, I think they did good with who they picked.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you're going to go off of that, which I'm not saying they necessarily are because had these looks in the comics as well, but probably Jubilee in place of Psylocke. Aside from that, that's probably a solid lineup here. I like it. Speaking of new Marvel collectors pieces and new toys here, we had some Fantastic Four wave of Marvel Legends series figures announced by Hasbro during their Fan First Friday on a Monday event. So we got this Doctor Doom. So there were a few villains as well as, of course, the Fantastic Four themselves. So we have this Doctor Doom figure here. And then we have Psycho Man. So this was one of the two that they've never built a figure for in the Marvel Legends series previously. So I love that they have 2 in this one wave. So Psycho Man, obviously very unique sculpt, like very different from any other figure you would have seen. And then we also have the High Evolutionary as well, and interesting character choices to go with these Fantastic Four figures. Then we have the Fantastic Four themselves. So you've got the Thing, you've got Mr. Fantastic with his stretchy hands.
Yeah.
We have the Human Torch. And so these are, and then an Invisible Woman, Sue Storm as well, with her force field. These are a classic look for the characters because this is in celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Fantastic Four. So I really like the classic looks they went with. And these are all available for pre-order right now. I haven't checked as of today. I don't know which ones are already sold out, but you can head over to Hasbro Pulse and check that out right now. They also announced 2 additional Fantastic Four figures, including this clear Invisible Woman. So, I mean, almost literally invisible. And I thought it was funny. Dwight from the Hasbro team here talked about this being one of the most difficult figures they've ever had to create, just because getting the color and everything right was so difficult working with a clear figure, and just really had like no reference point to work with the entire time they were building it out. We also have a powered down Johnny Storm. So he comes just in his normal Fantastic Four outfit, but with these little flame accessories, so you can have it look like he's about to power up, which is pretty cool. And then they got into a little bit more about the Galactus HasLab project that is still out there searching for funding. I think there are only about 2,000 backers short of their goal now, so we're getting there. And they announced the first stretch goal for it, which will be, as opposed to, they're looking for 14,000 for this product to go into development. And if they reach 16,000, you will also receive a Frankie Ray Nova figure, which is really cool with this big flame base here. And they mentioned the interchangeability with that piece as well, so you could use it for Johnny Storm as well if you wanted to pose him.
Oh.
I thought that was cool.
Can I ask who Frankie Ray? What is it, Nova?
Yeah, so it's just a different version of the character. Well, it's another character named Nova,
Okay.
but their human name is Frankie Ray. And this is actually one of the heralds of Galactus. So like Silver Surfer is a herald as well, and like Tarax and some other characters. So I'm interested to see. The tease they gave us makes it seem as though the next stretch goal will be a Silver Surfer figure to go along with Galactus. But I love that the first one is Frankie Ray, a very different character. Then they also announced this 3-pack of X-Force figures. We have Cannonball, we have Domino, and we have Richter. And here is the 3-pack here. And this was a and Shop Disney exclusive, and this is also available for pre-order now. So you can find it on either Hasbro Pulse or on Shop Disney, which is the first time they've ever done that before.
Yeah, that's really cool. Although I feel like Cannonball should be jumping into a pool.
That would have made for an interesting figure, that's for sure. They do have it. You can see in the box here, he has his normal legs right here, but then he has also that launching base, so you can swap him out. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I mean, that's awesome. Like the launching base itself. Like, yeah,
right.
I would probably display that more than.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you're going to have him out on a shelf, you're going to have him with that base. So we'll wrap up with just some more Marvel Comics news here. A few new things announced. We got Last Annihilation, which we read a part of a couple weeks ago when you were on, and they're continuing that story still. Wiccan and Hulkling. So Last Annihilation, Wiccan and Hulkling #1 is the full title. That'll be coming out September 1st. So we know this story is at least continuing through the rest of the month of August. We also got an interesting look at the cover for The Death of Doctor Strange #3 with 3 new villains. Don't know too much about them just yet. I'm very interested to see where this goes. I still have my issues with calling a story The Death of Doctor Strange because we know Doctor Strange will be back. But
right.
but yeah, so another interesting development there. We learned Inferno #1, the next big X crossover event, will be coming September 29th. And got to look at the cover here. And they are hyping this up that this is going to be changing the world of the mutants, not just the X-Men. So bigger picture there.
Don't they do that with the comic stories? Like every year, they're like, "Well, we're gonna change the way that this is for for these
Right.
heroes.
Yeah, well, I think that specifically they said this is going to burn their world to the ground. So I don't know. I don't know what that means, where they're going to go with that. Should be pretty interesting. I wonder if that's going to stem out of what we read in X-Force at all today, because that's to some potentially ominous things. So we'll see where that goes.
I can see
and then finally, the one that I am most excited for, giant size Black Cat Infinity Score, which is we've been talking about the Infinite Destiny story and playing out sort of over different titles. There hasn't really been this one continuous series, but we were teased the concept of the Black Cat getting all the Infinity Stones a while back, and that is not at all the kind of character you expect to wield that kind of power. So I'm really interested to see where this goes. It still bothers me that they use the wording giant size Black Cat, no D at the end. It's just giant size. That's very it's annoying to somebody who writes for a living.
Yeah.
But you know what? If all the Marvel Comics writers can get over it, then I guess I can too. So I'm definitely looking forward to the continuation of this story, and I mean the beginning of the end of this story for sure.
That looks awesome.
So that will do it for us for this week on Marvel Time. I am really looking forward to the next What If next week on Disney Plus, and of course some more comics as well.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully you guys will read the next Moon Knight, because I really enjoyed that, and I really liked this Defenders. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the continuation of Moon Knight, and yeah, Defenders. I have no idea where this is going, so whenever we get more of that, I'm definitely on board for that as well. But yeah, we will be back next week. Zacks of Life will also be back next week on Monday, so keep an eye out for our next episode of the Marvel podcast here from Laughing Place. And you can see Bekah, of course, on Tuesdays on Barely Necessities. So, and Bekah, thank you again for filling in and keeping that Wednesday Warrior status going.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, we'll see everyone next week. Bye.